Hi everyone, welcome back to Storytime Recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the film from 2020, Ghosts of War. Without any further, let's get started. The film opens with a message that appears stating that the war will not end. This message was given by D. Warner, who was an 18-year-old that participated in World War II. This film is set in 1944. A soldier wearing the aforementioned uniform is observed dozing off on the ground between trees. At night, as nightmares about past events begin to play and cause him to startle. When he wakes up, he sees a silhouette of a figure on the tree across from it. He tries to stealthily pick up his gun while glancing at his soldier partner, who is soundly asleep. As he turns to face the tree, the figure lights up a cigarette and smokes. Now that he's afraid, Chris asks what the person needs, and he gets a thrown cigarette in response. He hears the man take up his gun, so Chris closes his eyes so he won't have to face or predict what will happen next, but he finds no response when he opens them to see no one. As morning arrives, all of the soldiers are shown preparing for the day. Chris is the group's commander, and he is accompanied by 5 other soldiers: Eugene, Kirk, Butchie, and Tappert. The soldiers are tasked with protecting a shadow. Kirk is seen complaining about his itchy socks and asking Butchie, who is another soldier. Chris then steps in and tells them to begin their journey to the base, which is 30 miles across the hills. As they approaches it, Chris notices a jeep approaching and stops it from an army, telling them as much. All of the men took their places, and shortly after, the soldiers ambushed the moving jeep, killing everyone inside. Eugene sulkily gripes that they could have kept the jeep because they still have a long walk to go, but one of the soldiers called out to him. Looking inside and around the jeep, they discover that it is owned by the Nazis of Germany. After quickly killing the Nazi wounded troops, they begin searching for maps, coded communications, or other anything that these warriors might use to win the war. When Tappert extracts a golden tooth from one of the soldiers' teeth, Butchie challenges the Nazi major, who is still alive, to fight. Eugene translates it for the major, believing he doesn't understand, but Butchie yells at him, telling him that the major is only acting as though he doesn't understand and that he understands every word that is said. While Butchie and the major fight in combat, the other men search for clues. There, Chris locates a map showing the closest crossing, which is 2 miles away at the base. The fight continues, with Butchie being repeatedly punched in the face despite his defense. Chris shoots the major in the head to end the fight, instantly putting him to eternal sleep. He also tells his fellow soldier that they took the wrong turn behind them and that they had to walk back again, adding that they do not have much time left. After packing up, they set out on their journey. During an evening stroll, Chris hears the sound of grass rustling in the woods. They instantly stop, aim their firearm in that direction, and wait for people to show up. They observe the area carefully and come across a group of Jewish refugees strolling outside. The other men remain behind, but Tappert approaches the group and gives the German's jacket, which he had previously borrowed from the soldiers, to a woman and her son. He also gives them the pouch containing all of the golden teeth he had removed from the German's mouth and the Nazi badge that could aid the group in the future. At night, they arrive at their destination with things on fire and find people hiding from them. While traveling, Chris tells his troops that they will protect a castle for however long it takes, and that it is a significant event for them all. Content with what they have learned, the army proceeds with their expedition. They arrived at the castle they were supposed to protect in the morning. The Nazis had earlier approached and dared to take control of it, but they quickly did. As they were making their way to the door, they discovered one of the troops asleep and woke him up. The soldier hurried inside the castle to tell the major that they were relieved. Inside the castle, they discover all of the troops dozing out in the main hall, their faces frightening, in their desire to leave as quickly as possible. They thought it strange and questioned why, but the soldiers inside were so terrified that they quickly left. When Chris asks why, one of the soldiers responds that they are running behind schedule because Chris and his army were a day late while attempting to appear tough. The soldiers decide there is no use in carrying on the conversation, and they depart without even noticing that one of them forgot their rucksack. Chris, Eugene, and Tappert make the decision to explore the house, while Butchie and Kirk remain in the kitchen. Eugene discovers a piano in one of the rooms and begins to play it. Tappert, meanwhile, goes downstairs to the basement and discovers a family picture frame. As he looks at it, he hears a wooden object fall. Chris hears enigmatic noises coming from near the window. While Butchie heads down the hallway, he hears a door close and strange events begin to occur, but the soldiers do not pay any attention. At night, they all gather around the fireplace to rest until they begin to hear footsteps upstairs. They get up right away and begin to slowly make their way upstairs to investigate the source of the footsteps. As they get there, they all go in different directions. Kirk and Chris were about to enter a room with a closed door when it suddenly opened, startling them. As they entered, they noticed a body silhouette hanging from a window above, but it quickly vanished. Later that evening, as the guys are reciting eerie, cryptic stories about their wartime family, they hear steady banging noises coming from the fireplace. Chris deciphers this as the Morse code, which Eugene transcribes and immediately declares, "I have no legs."
G.
Everyone is startled as a squirrel falls into the fireplace. Chris, who doesn't comprehend what's happening and believes it's best for everyone, tells Tappert to sleep in the attic while the other men are on beds, but remain within shouting distance. After everyone has gone to sleep, Eugene goes downstairs and begins reading a German soldier's book that details the past of the family that lived in that castle. As he reads, he looks up and looks at the family photo before the candle goes out. He lights it again and sees that everyone in the picture has vanished. When Tappert is in the attic, pointing his gun to look outside the castle, he sees a body hanging with him in the room. Startled, he decides to go downstairs and check around, but there is nobody there. When morning arrives, they gathered on the terrace, wondering what had happened yesterday. In the attic, Eugene and Tappert discover a sketch on the floor. They walk across it and move the cabinet across it while passing the pentagram once more. However, this time, Eugene's fingers are crushed by the cupboard door closing, causing him to scream in agony. Frustrated, he leaves the taper alone in the room until he notices someone hanging from the top of the attic. According to the radio, the German army is close to the castle, and they think it is haunted. As they discuss leaving, they hear the banging sound once more, and as Eugene begins to transcribe, his hand moves on its own to spill out the message, "If you leave, you die." At the same time, they hear the same message over the radio. That night, a German patrol attacked, but his army knew it and was prepared. Despite the large number of German soldiers, the American soldiers bravely fought and killed the majority of their enemies. Some German soldiers are killed by an unexpected force in a strange way, such as when one of them drowns in the bathtub without anyone pushing his head under the water, when a man is set on fire by nobody in particular, and many other instances. However, Butchie dives into a grenade and sustains injuries, and the other men rush to get their fellow soldier the first aid they need.
Enough to do the job.
That night, when Eugene tells what happened of the previous owner of the Hellwig, they learn that the family had been hiding Jews in their castle and that the Germans were aware of this. They viciously attacked and killed the family, forcing his mother to watch at gunpoint while the father was burned alive, the daughter was hanged, and the son was submerged in the bathtub. After killing them, the Germans had disposed of them in a heap. Later that evening, Chris went into the bathroom and stood in front of a water-filled bathtub. He looked into it, saw the boy's body, and told him he could rescue them. However, as soon as he turned, he was flung into the water and an unexpected force had fallen on him. When he awakens, he is in a room and one of the soldiers informs him about his nightmare. After returning, Chris and Eugene went downstairs to look for more proof about the Hellwig family. As they point their torch at the frame, the light goes out, so Eugene rushing upstairs to take a math. After being left in the basement, Chris discovers a book with nothing written on it. Eugene eerily stands behind Chris, but as Kirk screams for them, the two of them dash upstairs. Upstairs, Butchie is awakened and is repeating, "This isn't real, it was us." He died before he could tell Chris anything more. That evening, the troops are certain that the castle is haunted, so they make the decision to depart. After an unplanned burial of their comrade, the four leave the spot on foot, realizing that they are repeating the events that led them to the castle back, such as ambushing the Germans and killing their men during the conflict with the refugees. Following another journey inside an abandoned hospital van, they decide to call it a day. As they sleep on the ground in the middle of the forest, Tappert senses someone dragging him. He opens his eyes to find that he is being hanged in the attic. When he wakes up and realizes it is a nightmare, The other three are sleeping, and the word Vetrilic on ground. The same things continue on day 2, which leads them to believe that they are in a loop and cursed. They decide to give the family a traditional funeral and go back into the shadows. While other men are busy with preparations and Tappert says the word Vetrilic, Eugene explains to the gathered that the word is a Muslim belief that means that if you allow evil to occur, it could come back to haunt you tenfold.
Like a curse.
At night, as everyone waits for the Hellwig family, Chris senses someone dragging him to an outhouse where the family's bones are discovered. While Kirk, Chris and Eugene were outdoors, Tappert was inside when Mrs. Hellwig attacked him. After the bodies have been buried, Eugene reads the book again in an attempt to figure out how to properly bury them. But he finds that the Hellwig were Afghanistan and that the text is now in Arabic rather than German. He goes on to say that Mrs. Hellwig cursed the men who were merely watching events unfold and praying since they were at a loss for what to do. Inside, Eugene finds out that the burial just strengthened their ability to raise the dead. The ghosts are now attacking the men, and Tappert can be heard praying to the pentagram above. While one of the ghosts tries to choke Chris, Butchie's words, "This isn't real," repeat in his head, and he has hallucinations. Before waking up in a futuristic hospital where he is attended by doctors, his fellow soldiers are in the room, unconscious and disfigured. The doctors tell him that he and his fellow soldiers had been experiencing simulated reality because of post-traumatic stress disorder brought on by the events of World War II, and that they were merely trying to help him and his fellow soldiers. As Dr. Angel asks him if he can recall his final day in Afghanistan, Chris regains his memory. He recalled that he and his fellow troops were not involved in World War II, but rather are members of the current American military, and he added that part of his last duty was to save the Hellwig family. That worked with America to safely evacuate them, but before they could do so, the Islamic State patrol ambushed them. The 5 troops were prepared to attack the patrol, but their CIA handler told them to stay within the wall and wait for them to depart.
Back to the big brass.
Reluctantly, the men followed, seeing the Hellwig family's murder as it was shown in the simulation. The family's grieving mother set off a bomb while she was dying and said, "Vetrilic," but she instantly perished as he leaped on the device. At the hospital, the electricity fluctuates and confuses the medical staff. Chris discovers that the curse is real and that the Hellwig family is actually haunting the simulation that the guys are going through. Since he can't think of any other way, Chris begs the medical professionals to assist them in going back to the simulation so they can face the family, apologize, and lift the curse. He awakens and discovers that he and his fellow soldiers camped out at night, the starting point of the experience, in the midst of the forest, where a shadowy figure is burning a cigarette and watching him. Thanks for watching, and remember to turn on your notifications to watch more movie recaps like this one.